pro-life is always going to win in the long run. It's always going to win.
This week in Pennsylvania, a huge right-to-life rally in Harrisburg, but is pro-life still a winning cause for Republican politicians running statewide? A bill to give parents more say in what their kids are reading in school libraries moves forward in the state Senate. Critics call it a book ban. And an attempt to better inform buyers about those hidden and junk fees that are tacked onto tickets for concerts and ball games. Hello and welcome to This Week in Pennsylvania. I'm Dennis Owens. We are covering hot topics in PA policy and politics, as well as the issues that are important to you and your family. Well, the moving the primary election date saga continued at the Capitol this week. The House passing a bill to move it to April 16th, 1 week before the scheduled April 23rd, which is the first day of Passover, which is why some people want to move it. Not certain where the Senate stands on that. But that's next year. This year's election is in less than 3 weeks. And the state insists this week that counties are ready and you can trust the process.
Take a few moments to discuss the importance of this election.
There was a time not long ago that conducting elections was bureaucratic and boring when officials didn't feel the need to say this just before one.
The Shapiro administration is committed to ensuring that every election in Pennsylvania is free and fair and safe and secure.
But not perfect. In Lancaster County, instructions said return mail-in ballots in the white secrecy envelope. Problem is, they sent yellow envelopes. York County sent 2 mail-in ballots to about 400 voters, voting twice not permitted. Cumberland County's ballots were too heavy for a single stamp postage, though they'll get delivered anyway. And Luzerne County printed wrong voting precincts. The secretary says there's been a lot of turnover in the folks who run elections. That loss of institutional knowledge can lead to human error. But
they are not deliberate. They are not intentional. They are not seeking to change the outcome of an election. It's upsetting because I know what it must be like, and they are committed to having their voters' votes counted.
One Lancaster County commissioner wishes the state would be more aggressive in telling counties exactly how to conduct elections, get them all on the same page, maybe use the same printer.
That would make a lot more sense, and then there wouldn't be any question because there would be one way to do it. But there are different ways to do it in different counties.
Sounds good, Schmidt says, but it's not the law. It's the state's job to assist in elections. It's the county's job to conduct them.
It's important that we do whatever we can to promote as much uniformity as we possibly can, but still allow counties the flexibility that they need to do what's best for their voters in their counties.
Couple of dates for you. Monday, October 23rd, the deadline to register to vote. October 31st, Halloween, the deadline to request a mail-in ballot. And November 7th, of course, is Election Day here in PA. Well, thousands of pro-life Pennsylvanians converged on the state capitol this week for the 3rd annual March and Rally for Life. These are big in number and big in voice events. But is pro-life a stance that can win statewide? Many experts believe backlash from the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade led to big Democratic gains at the ballot box last year. But Pro-Life Federation's Michael Geer says Republicans can win on the issue if they go on the offensive.
People are going to get their voice and understand how radical the Democrat position is on that issue, especially the progressive Democrats who believe there is no abortion that should not be allowed.
That's never a decision that the government should tell somebody that they're not allowed to make.
Every human being.
One pro-life lawmaker told me it's sad that people who support the unborn are now, in many quarters, considered extreme. Parental empowerment or a book ban? That depends on who you talk to. Senate Bill 7 passed out of committee this week that would require parental sign-off on their kids seeing what is considered sexually explicit books in school libraries. Supporters call it a common-sense solution. Critics, of course, are using the double B words.
We believe Senate Bill 7 is a book ban, plain and simple.
The gross mischaracterization that somehow this is a book ban is just so absurd I can't even get my mind around it.
Now, the bill did pass out of committee. It's onto the full Senate. It is not likely, however, to go anywhere in the House. Well, have you bought concert tickets or ball game tickets on a site like Ticketmaster recently? Then you have no doubt seen the whopping fees often tacked on at the very end of the transaction. A bill that passed the House this week would require sellers to disclose those fees up front. Democrat Nick Pisitano calls it the What You See Is What You Pay Act. It passed, but some Republicans grumbled that lawmakers should be focusing on more pressing issues like finishing the budget.
This is beyond ridiculous. We need to get to the real work of the people and let Taylor Swift and Ticketmaster worry about themselves.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time, and when we get the chance to move important issues for Pennsylvanians forward, that's what we're going to do.
The bill now moves to the Senate, where its future, like lots of things that have passed the House, is uncertain, and vice versa, by the way. A call this week to help a specific group of public sector and public school retirees left behind by the 2001 pension bump for everybody else. They were not included in the hike and have not seen an increase in 2 decades. On average, they're in their 80s and they make about $20,000 a year. There are bills to boost their pensions, and supporters say with inflation, it's no longer a livable wage.
I was inspired to do the public good, and I did it. I have no regrets. But fairness is important, and this is an issue of fairness, morality, and taking care of people that need it.
And here's an example of the inequity. That teacher, Scott Brown, he retired in 2000 after 40 years. Had he waited 1 more year, he would have been included in Act 9, which boosted pensions 25%, and he'd be getting $15,000 a year more. Should striking workers be able to collect unemployment while walking the picket line? Several lawmakers say yes, arguing they've paid into it. It's their money and they should get access to it. Many workers say yes because they still have to provide for their families while on strike. But there is hard opposition from many Republicans who wonder where the money's coming from and argue it just sends the wrong message.
If we're paying people to stay home, we're eliminating the need for them to even want to come to the table.
This growth of these corporate anti-union lawyers that have made exercising labor rights more and more difficult for American workers to do. So what we are trying to do is rebalance a pendulum here.
Very timely issue given the numerous recent strikes across the nation and right here in the Commonwealth. Well, next year's election will be very interesting in Harrisburg and its suburbs. Republican Congressman Scott Perry has 6 Democratic challengers and counting. And now a big name has just jumped into the state Senate race in Dauphin County. 6-term Democratic State Representative Patty Kim announced that she's running for the Senate seat held by 2-term Republican John DeSanto. Democrats believe the district was drawn more favorably for them and are confident they've got a strong candidate to win it. We asked Kim why voters should choose her.
So I think the biggest difference is that I would really enjoy the job and want to do the job. I think this county needs somebody who's energetic and wants to be present and come up with new ideas and try to solve problems. And I think I would be that better candidate.
Senator DeSanto did confirm for us that he is seeking re-election to a 3rd term. He is the Republican incumbent. Another Democrat just jumped into the primary, hoping to unseat 6-term incumbent Republican Congressman Scott Perry. Businessman John Broadhurst filed paperwork. He's the 6th candidate into the race, with at least 2 more expected. Coming up, he was Speaker of the State House for a hot minute earlier this year, and Mark Rozzi is about to announce his candidacy for a statewide seat next year. He's here. You stay right there. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We are joined now by Representative Mark Rozzi, Democrat from Berks County. You've got a big announcement to make on our show.
I do.
I don't have trumpets, but go ahead.
I'm announcing that I'm running for Auditor General in 2024. I'm
Why?
excited.
Why?
I think that I want to continue the good governance that I have been doing in my 6 terms in office and bring that from the legislative level into a statewide office.
State representatives are allowed to seek re-election to the state house at the same time running for a statewide office. Will you do that?
Absolutely not. I think when I see politicians do that, to me that is the most selfish thing that they could do, because if there was a special election, it could cost the taxpayers millions of dollars in special elections. And for me, I just want to have respect for the taxpayers and say, listen, I'm all in for Auditor General. I'm not going to run for 2 seats here. I want to do the job of the AG.
Not only that, you have a bill, run for one. Is that what is that? And I guess you have to live up to the terms of that, right?
Right. It's just basically your name can't appear on the ballot more than once in any primary, municipal, or general election.
Is that moving anywhere, by the way, or no?
It's in committee right now, and I do keep approaching the committee chairman and saying, hey, I think this would be a great bill to run. They do have this in the city of Philadelphia, resigned the run. So, and it's actually in many states across the United States. So I think it's just a bill that respects the taxpayers.
Our incumbent Auditor General is Tim DeFore. He's a Republican.
Right.
He's going to seek a 2nd term. He actually is an auditor.
Sure.
You're not. So what qualifies you for that job?
Well, I think that, first of all, I've been a business owner my entire life, okay? I come from the business sector, fiscally responsible. And I think the difference between Tim and I is, I want the taxpayers to know out there is that I can't be bought, okay? And when I say that, Tim DeFore, 81% of his total contributions to his campaign came from the Commonwealth Leaders Fund, okay? They support charter schools. And I want the people out here of Pennsylvania to know that this guy can't be bought by lobbyists or special interest groups, that I'm always going to do the right things and stand up for good governance and for the people who contribute, whether through taxes or whatever, the money that's going into the state fund.
And we should note, whoever the Democratic candidates are, they have people funding them too.
Correct.
Right? So, they may have business.
Yeah, but the difference is here, Tim DeFore has taken so much money from this one PAC and then sent the audits for the public schools back to PDE, who can't even afford to do the audits. There's no charter school audits. And listen, this is a problem that we've been facing in the State House. We've been wanting to pass legislation to make changes.
Jack Wagner, the Auditor General, about 4 Auditors General ago, complained about the funding mechanism for charters and cyber charters, say we need to fix it, and nobody in the legislature's actually done that.
That's right, and we believe there's a lot of fraud and waste, and if we would have the Auditor General actually do his job and audit charter schools and make recommendations, we could come up with some solutions.
Well, before he's your candidate, you've got to get past Malcolm Kenyatta, fellow Democratic state representative who is also running for Auditor General.
Correct.
Announced that several months ago. We asked Malcolm Kenyatta this week why voters should choose him and not you. Here's what he said.
Leaders in labor, legislative leaders, municipal leaders that people know and trust are saying we think Malcolm is the person that can win this race and actually deliver a government that works for working people. And so I'm going to be focused on facing Tim DeFore and making sure that we win in the next election.
Reaction to that? He says, I guess he's saying he's got more people lined up supporting him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been out there for a long time. He's getting endorsements from all these people from across the state. And the thing about me is I only want one endorsement, and that's the endorsement of the people of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to go out there and work hard to make up some of this ground, but I believe I'm a better candidate that represents Pennsylvania better. I'm more of the old school blue dog. I'm going to say it like it is, more of a centrist, which I believe my type of politics represents Pennsylvania a lot better than Malcolm's.
I want you to say it like it is. Tell me from your perspective, what was that experience when you were Speaker of the House for, 2 months or so, whatever that was at the beginning of this year, one of the more bizarre chapters in Pennsylvania political history. From your perspective, what was that like?
Well, for me, it's just like this doing the Auditor General thing now. It's like it was a calling. When I saw there was chaos and there was a problem that needed to be solved, I rose up to the occasion and became Speaker, and I stopped a lot of bad stuff from happening, some bad constitutional amendments from passing. To me, the greatest gift and honor of serving Speaker during that time was to go on the speaker's listening tour and actually listening to the people of Pennsylvania, which they were like, we can't even believe you're out here. You're actually, taking our advice. And I did take their advice, took it back and created the Rozzi rules, good governance, House operating rules, bringing it back. And it was just a great opportunity for me to get out there and hear the concerns, the real concerns of what they wanted to see from our government.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with Mark Rozzi. More This Week in Pennsylvania when we come right back. And welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. Our guest is State Representative Mark Rozzi, who just announced on this show he's running for Auditor General next year, and our analyst Christopher Nicholas of the Eagle Consulting Group, Mike Manzo of Triad Strategies. Mike, question for Mark.
Yeah, so Mark, welcome. And you made your career almost single-handedly got elevated by taking on the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania, and really, you became the face of sexual assault survivors, across the Commonwealth. This is your signature issue. Are you comfortable if you get the nomination for Auditor General and you're called on to serve in that role? Are you comfortable leaving if that issue is not yet finished?
I know that's a concern for some of the victims, but I believe that we're actually going to get this done hopefully soon, maybe possibly over the next month, if we can work out an agreement with the Senate through the fiscal code here. I would love to see this put to rest. And if we can, we would get this accomplished early next year. I still have a lot of victims that reach out to me every day, and this is a #1 priority. It's been, like you said, my signature issue. But I think what I want the people out there to know is I haven't been afraid to take on public or private institutions and hold them accountable.
Christopher.
Mark, thanks for being with us. Good to have you. Next year, you're a state row office candidate, and those folks in Pennsylvania run at the same time as the presidential candidates. So it likely now that the presidential candidates will be the same ones we had in 2020. Back then, your Republican opponent, the Republican incumbent now, Tim DeFore, he was able to run ahead of his presidential nominee. So to win, you're going to have to probably run ahead of Joe Biden. So what's the Mark Rozzi plan to outdo Joe Biden in Pennsylvania? Scranton Joe.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you look at the results in my district, I outperformed every other politician in my district because I think the people, they see something different. I often say out there, I don't like politicians, I don't like lobbyists. I do what's right for Pennsylvanians. And I'm always going to be my authentic self, and I'm going to listen to the voters out there, make myself accessible to them, and let them know that I care about them. This isn't something that I'm trying to be selfish with. I want to be able to give back, not only to my county of Berks, but to this whole Commonwealth.
I want to pick up on Mike's topic, and that is the constitutional amendment that you championed that would allow survivors of sex abuse to sue their abusers beyond the statute of limitations. You just made news when you said you think it'll be done next month. What leads you to believe that?
I'm hoping, the one thing...
Because we've heard that a lot, that we thought it was going to get across the finish line, I
never expected this. I mean, I'm in my 6th term. I would have thought that, passing child protection laws would have been something easy in Harrisburg, and it hasn't been. But I know one thing is that my majority leader, Matt Bradford, is out there working the issue hard for me and trying to get an agreement with the Senate to get this done for all victims of childhood sexual abuse.
Okay, Mark Rozzi, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck in your pursuit of the Auditor General's office, and we're going to have you on it again.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay right there. Much more This Week in Pennsylvania when we come right back. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. More with our analysts, Mike and Christopher. Okay, he just announced on our show. I like this trend, by the way. Anybody want to announce for statewide office, you can do it right
Makes
here.
Dennis happy.
We can do it right here.
Thank you.
What are his chances? Obviously, Malcolm Kenyatta got in a couple of months ago. I think he did that to try to chase other people out or keep them from getting in.
Yeah, well, that typically never works. I mean, listen, I think they're both really fine public servants. I think Malcolm's got his eyes certainly on higher office. But it's kind of the matchup between...
You think? He ran for Senate last year.
I mean, I think it's the matchup
State House
between...
cannot contain Malcolm Kenyatta.
Kind of like the rising star in Malcolm and the maverick in Mark Rozzi. Mark has spent his career being a little bit outside of the power structure, and he takes on big fights. Malcolm, again, is a fine human, and I think he's got other aspirations. So
well, look, that's going to be a really contested primary next year, as will the primaries on both sides for Attorney General. So there'll be a lot of action there. If you went to a test tube and said, let's create the perfect statewide auditor, you'd get Tim DeFore, whose whole public and private career has been doing auditing for health insurers, all sorts of different states. That's what he is. So, I mean, I find it interesting that both Rozzi and Kenyatta say that, they'll be a better auditor than the guy who's been a lifelong auditor. So we'll see how that plays out.
Let's talk about mail-in ballots for a minute. As you saw in the story, the lead story, there's a number of issues with mail-in ballots still. And a lot of people are wondering, 67 counties are just choosing, printing up their own ballots, and can't there be some a little more uniformity?
Well, remember, at least in the primary, county ballots are really different. Yeah. Some counties elect a combined register of wills and a recorder of deeds. Bigger counties have separate ones. A little bit easier in the general because everybody usually has the same, closer to the same number of positions. My thought on that story you ran is, why don't we just print security envelope on the envelope?
Or secrecy envelope.
Secrecy, and that way it doesn't matter if it's green or purple or yellow. You don't get into that because it's death by 1,000 cuts. And I say what I always say, if voting by mail is the only way or the best way for you to vote, do it. If not, voting in person puts less strain and stress on the system.
What do you make of an era in which the Secretary of State feels the need to come out 2 weeks before an election and say, you can trust the results? There was a day, as I said in the story, when it was just a bureaucratic function. Like, nobody questioned the process. Sometimes they didn't like the result, but they didn't question the people that were putting them on.
That was a bygone era before Donald Trump ever appeared on the stage and began questioning every election which he lost. And then wide swaths of the Republican Party followed along. Just this week, the Republicans are out there with their Bank of Vote effort, trying to encourage their people to vote by mail. And at the same time, you have a Republican representative on the air saying, there's nothing worse for election integrity than mail-in voting. It's like, we know the Republican Party would love to compete with Democrats when it comes to mail-in ballots, but when you got the top people in your party saying it's ripe with corruption, then it doesn't really seem to work.
It's the same election, whether you vote a week or so early by mail or vote on election day, it's the same election. So what people have to remember is that in statewide races for Republicans, we can't do what Democrats do, which is just try to pump turnout, because there are fewer of us. We have to still focus on persuasion and not get totally caught up in only talking about get out the vote. And that's sometimes what statewide candidates here can forget.
Through Governor Shapiro action a few weeks ago, there's automatic voter registration now when you go to the DMV or PennDOT to do something with your license. They announced at that press conference that in the same snapshot last year there were like 7,000, but this year, since it's 11,000. But I always think of my friend Chris Nicholas, who says just because people get registered doesn't mean the numbers of people who actually bother to go to the polls spikes.
Yeah, so far more Republicans have taken advantage of this AVM, automatic voter registration. And I think, think about the subset of people in Pennsylvania who drive and have to get licenses. Probably slightly more Republicans than Democrats, because in urban areas where people don't want to drive, those are more likely to be Democrats. But again, just because you're registered, Dennis, doesn't mean you actually exercise your franchise.
Yeah, that nefarious scheme by Josh Shapiro that the Republicans threatened to sue over, motor voter, is actually benefiting the Republicans. So,
well, listen, he should have run it through the legislature.
Okay, hang on.
Sure.
You need to register to vote in this state. The deadline to do that is Monday, tomorrow. Thanks for joining us this week. We hope to see you next week on This Week.